So let's have a conversation about the rights of children. The Day of the African Child is going to be commemorated next week, and this will be 30 years down the road. The theme this year is 30 years after the adoption of the Charter, accelerating the implementation of Agenda 2040 for an Africa fit for children. This is globally now the theme for this year. And as we gear up towards that conversation, let's start talking about children. We were talking about children and education in the previous hour, saying so children are in school, parents, some of them not being able to afford school fees. Magoha saying, okay, now we have tolerated this long enough, so those who can't, please, school heads, you're at liberty to deal as you'd like to deal. Joining us in the conversation now is Abdinoor Mohammed. He is the acting CEO of the National Council for Children's Services. And on the line is Yvonne Arunga. She's a country director for Save the Children. Very good morning to you, Abdinoor Mohammed. Karibu sana to the show.
Good morning to you also. Thank you very much. To begin with, as you have said, we are marking the Day of the African Child for this year 2021. This day is usually marked on the 16th of June every year. However, we launch it and start its build-up activities as early as the month begins. Just last Saturday, we had a session for children from all over the 47 counties where we engaged them in discussions regarding how best they could also contribute to their welfare and what affects them. Tomorrow also we are officially launching the activity, and thereafter we still wish to have some more activities up to 16th. As you have said, the theme for this year is on 30 years after the implementation, after the adoption. African Charter on the rights and welfare of the child has been adopted. We accelerated the implementation of Agenda 2040 and Africa Fit for Children. This is a commitment that has been signed in 2015, though a 40-year commitment and a 25-year commitment, and the vision here is Agenda 2040. The reporting cycle is 5 years, and we are also reporting for the first 5-year cycle for this time.
Okay.
At the same time, we are also marking the 30th anniversary of the Day of the African Child. As you can see in the theme, we have had 30 years plus now since the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child was adopted. There are certain aspirations, about 10 aspirations, which we look forward to, including issues of children health, child survival, issues of rights of children, framework for the protection of children, issues of education, as you have said, registration of birth of children, children in conflict and at war, and how we have an obligation to ensure that they are not affected, child participation, and children taking part actually in their own activities, and the general value of our community for children.
Yeah.
Those are some of the aspirations which we are trying to look back into.
Right.
As a country also, and generally as a continent. The Day of the African Child, usually it has been officially, it came through a resolution of the African Committee of Experts on the Right and Welfare of the Children after 1976 Soweto massacre. However, it's not only a historical day, but we also reflect on what have taken place, what good we have done for our children, what is still pending, and it also serves as an avenue for sensitization and awareness creation for our communities, which we need to be continuously going on, and on every time, with the challenge actually of an ever-increasing challenging world and environment in which we are now. We can't be without any sensitization and awareness creation.
It's important to have the conversations and always look at children and how they're doing.
Exactly, that is it.
So that's a good introduction.
Okay.
And thank you very much for joining us for this conversation. Also on the line is Yvonne. Yvonne Arunga is the country director for Save the Children. Good morning, Yvonne.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Situation Room. So Abdinoor is on the hot seat right here. So we're going to warm up the seat for you virtually. And we hope that by the end of the show, it'll be sufficiently heated.
Oh, that's good.
No, it's positive. So, on a light note here as we start the conversation, recently whenever we see the president making an appointment to the youth council, and there's let people come up in arms and saying, youth, why is it that the youth are not the ones who are being given these appointments? So here are people who are leading organizations talking about children. Would you expect some people come and say we should have younger people leading conversations about children?
Well, if all we want to do is have a conversation, we can have it. But the question that I think perhaps need to be asked is, what sort of individual do you believe ought to head such an organization?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it someone who might need the assistance of that particular organization, or somebody who has gone through the processes of youth and gotten to a point where they have a much broader understanding of life, and part of that understanding has to do with issues of youth? Or do you think that we should make it experimental so that you have an entire retinue of very youthful people heading it? Or should we ask, where can the youth be included so that their thinking and ideas in these matters are also considered in the decision-making process?
Even as we're looking, the Day of the African Child is celebrated every year. Every year there are different things that we're asked to remember and commemorate, and then hope that will actually be implemented. Before that, what is the state of the African child right now? And I think this is for both of you. What is the state? I look back over the last 1 year, and I remember so many things. We've seen defilement of children rising. We've seen children out of school. We've seen the rape of minors increasing, for example, boys and girls. We have seen inavailability of certain things that young girls need in schools, like sanitary help, etc., etc. These are just a few things in my mind. So even as we are saying that certain rights of children need to be implemented at an accelerated level, what is the state of Africa's children today?
Thank you. To begin with, actually, if I may talk of our country, Kenya, we have done a lot in regards to accelerating the rights of children. Kenya is a signatory to many international as well as regional instruments for the protection of the rights of the child. First and foremost, and the most significant of all being there, UNCRC, the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, which Kenya has ratified in 1990. Kenya also is a signatory to the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, which Kenya has also become a party to from 1999. Through this also, there were many other ways to ensure that we have adopted and we have domesticated those instruments, including the Children's Act of 2001, which actually has intended and has done, brought together all legislations concerning children so that we have a consolidated, adequate legislative instrument and a legal framework. At the same time also we had several other legislations to the same effect that were put in place, including the prohibition of FGM, the Sexual Offences Bill of 2006, the Anti-Trafficking Act, the Persons with Disabilities Act of 2003, and many other legislations actually, all intended to make sure that they support the protection legal instruments which are available for us. Our Constitution of Kenya also 2010, in Article 2, it's entrenched that all these legislations and international treaties that our government is a signatory to becomes part of our laws. Also, right now, there is the Children's Bill 2020 that has already left the AG's office and in Parliament, which we expect to be enacted the soonest. And we request also that it's enacted the soonest for the best interests of our children and our country. It takes care of all emerging issues and other unnecessary things deemed necessary actually to be included. At the same time, also our government has put up several structures and framework to make sure that child protection is enhanced. Up there, we have the Ministry of Labour and Social Protection, where several children agencies and the departments are domiciled. The Department of Children Services, the National Council for Children Services, the National Council for Persons with Disabilities, the Street Family Rehabilitation Trust Fund, and as you very well know, also our government has many other ministries and many other agencies that have purposely been put there to ensure that they support and stand for the protection and advancement and promotion of the rights of the children and service provision adequacy for children. At the grassroots levels also, there had been expansion of services, like departments and agencies which are serving children have been expanded to the grassroots level, and we are proud enough to say now in all our 47 counties, we have children offices, we have persons with disabilities offices, we have probation offices. In most of the places we have magistrates, all the counties plus even most of the sub-counties. These magistrates also have been gazetted, most of them as children magistrates. And there are structures also at the grassroots levels which are supporting the children, like the Area Advisory Council for Children's Services, which is an intersectoral agency bringing together state and non-state actors, which supports children rights and advocates for children rights, prioritize and plans also for children programs at those specific levels like the counties, the sub-counties, the wards, and something like that. We have even, there were several improvements and reforms that have taken place even in the judicial side. We have court users committees in most of our counties and sub-counties. They are the children's service weeks. They are more child-friendly judges and magistrates, I would say, at this time. And actually the government has been putting in place so many things. In terms of community support, knowing that children live in families and within communities, the government has put in place some social protection mechanisms. There is the OVC cash transfer program, domiciled within the Ministry of Labour and Social Protection. There is the Persons with Disabilities Cash Transfer Program. There is All Persons Cash Transfer Program, and all those pull to the improvement of the economic enhancement of the household. And the ultimate aim here is to make sure that the child
is also a beneficiary.
A beneficiary.
So structurally, it just sounds, Mr. Mohammed, that structurally the government has put in place the framework to support the child.
Exactly.
From policy to legal, in fact, even in our constitution and all the treaties that we've signed and that become automatically ratified as well. Yvonne, coming to you and answering the same question that that Ndu was asking. If you look at that, there's a structure that's in place, but as a non-state actor, Save the Children, you also deal now with children on a regular basis at the community level. Would you say that you're able then to ride on this proper structure that has been put in place by the government?
Okay, the question that was asked is a very pertinent one, and I'm glad that at this stage we are not discussing whether or not children have rights. I'm really glad that we are at a stage where there's wide ownership of that concept. So it's a good place to start. Now, days such as the Day of the African Child are a moment in time to step back and reflect on the progress against, Mr. Mohammed talked about, the legal instruments that we've signed up to, the various frameworks that we have in country. Now, question is, how far have we progressed against these various instruments. Because each time you want to gauge whether you're moving forward towards a particular issue, the good thing is to be able to, look at the current state, the question that was asked earlier, and compare it with the various mechanisms, and see, are we gaining traction fast enough? So, for instance, this year, the Africa Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of Children issued its concluding observations and recommendations in a report to us. And that's done periodically, where we have experts that look at what is the state really of the rights of the children in Kenya and what more has got to be done. And based on this, they issue, observations and recommendations. But it's 6 months down the line, and I think we've not had that much traction on developing a framework that, sets the parameters of exactly how this is going to be implemented. So we are, by and by, yes, we have even our own observations and recommendations that we make, but the question is, do we then follow up? So, for example, we are currently in a state where we are putting together our own report on the 6th and 7th, observations for the committee, which will be and when I say the committee, I'm talking about the UN Committee on the Rights of the Children. This is due on the 1st of September. But already there's quite challenges in this process, because to be able to put together such a report, you need data and you need resources for gathering this data. And that already is an issue. So the question is, if we do not set enough resources to be able to track ourselves against these commitments that we've made, then we are not in a position to truly see, where we are at. So unfortunately, that question that was asked, that tough question, where are we at on the rights of the children? My answer to that would be, we need to do more to ensure that, we have the data that shows us how much more we've got to go, because there's still recommendations that have been made in past years that are unfortunately still pending. That said,
can I ask you before you go on to that, Yvonne?
Yes, sure.
So in terms of data collection mechanisms, then what is available? Is that where the problem is? We're not able to collect the data needed, or that the data then is not being translated into information that can then be used? Because there must be a problem somewhere. If we don't have the data, is it that it's not being collected, or whatever is available then is not being analyzed in the way in which it should be? Where is the problem? Because if that then forms a problem for other things, then if solving that probably then is the answer.
Yeah, I think it's not just that. That's just one of the issues. So I think it's a resource issue sometimes, setting aside money to be able to track against these commitments. But then you must remember, like Mr. Mohammed said in the beginning, there are very many ministries, departments and agencies that track against the realization of the rights of the children. They all have their own plans, but one of the things that would get us to a better place is if their plans were better integrated. So again, we have the, information systems that capture different sorts of data. So we have the National Education Management System, for instance, the Child Protection Information Management System, and so on, the juvenile justice one. But they're not integrated. They're not speaking to each other. So even the little data that we do gather, we are not able to see a holistic picture of what the real situation is for the rights of children in Kenya. We do, we have to applaud the government for all these, frameworks and mechanisms that Mr. Mohammed talked about in the beginning. But we have to go that much further about ensuring, yes, they are there. Are we progressing fast enough along the, the targets and indicators, not only towards, the targets that we set ourselves nationally, but the ones also against these international instruments, the charters, but as well as the Sustainable Development Goals.
Yvonne, let me ask you this question, if I may. It's from a position of ignorance. What does Save the Children do exactly?
Save the Children is a child rights organization. So one of the things that we do is try and we actually do it. We look at, in our areas of work, we mainly work in the marginalized areas of Kenya. So we are in the ASAL regions mainly, but we also have programs in the western parts of Kenya. We have what we call our breakthroughs. And so when we talk about our breakthroughs, we are saying that in the areas that we work, we are advancing the issues of child health, maternal health and nutrition, child nutrition as well. We are advancing education, adoption, but also quality education for children.
How do you do this?
And we are also working on child protection issues, and we do it in various ways.
Please, this is what I'm interested in. How you do it?
Yes. When we are talking about under 5, we want them to survive, right?
Yes.
So there's programs that we are promoting in Western Africa, Western Kenya for the promotion of kangaroo mother care. So, like places like Bungoma, when babies are born very low birth weight, you know that our health facilities sometimes are constrained. You need to have a proper, meeting for children. Sometimes resources are an issue. Yet, we know that kangaroo mother care is a very low-cost way, which you can promote in our health facilities. So these babies that have been born very low birth weight can be, cared for in a certain way. Their temperature can be maintained using the mother's body temperature and the like. So that, as a way, it's something that's very low cost, but would love to roll that out, especially in our counties where resources are an issue. So that's one thing we've been doing, and really supporting the county of Bungoma to adopt it. And now it's crossed over to Busia. I would love to do that in many areas. Then in some of our counties, where there's, food insecurity issues, we work with the county government to see what kind of social protection measures are available to the communities there so that they get the assistance that they need. We also work with the county governments, particularly now in Western Kenya, to look at budget advocacy. Counties now have their budgets, and we are challenging them, in a way, how much of this budget are you putting aside specifically for children's issues? Also, how could you expand this budget? What more could you do in revenue collection so that when we are talking about health, as a county, you're able to set aside that? We are also, if you talk about the DAB, in the refugee camps, we are a major player in child protection, setting up child protection mechanisms and also providing early childhood education. So do you want me to go on?
Those are well said.
It's well said, but I have there's a phase 2 to the question, but we're going in for a break now. Then I will ask the phase 2 of the question.
All right.
So let's take a break at this point, and then we continue the conversation. Yvonne Arunga is the country director for Save the Children. We also have in the studio with us Abdinoor Mohammed, acting CEO at the National Council for Children's Services. As we gear up towards next week's commemoration of the Day of the African Child, this year's theme is accelerating the implementation of the rights of children. That's what we are having a conversation about with the lady and gentleman. What is it that needs to happen? So when you talk about accelerating this implementation of the rights to children, Abdinoor, I'm sure you'll be telling us the things that the council, for example, is looking at to accelerate the challenges that also Yvonne is posing and raising. These are the conversations we'll be having. 8:30, Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. We are live on KTN Home, we're live online, and we are also live on radio. Good morning. We'll be back shortly.
This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
The Situation Room. In the room this morning is Eric Latif, Nduoko CT Muga, and our guest is Abdinoor Mohammed, the acting CEO of the National Council for Children's Services. Joining us on the line is Yvonne Arunga, the country director at Save the Children. We are talking about accelerating implementation of the rights of children. As we were going into this, Abdinoor, you talked about the various things that the government has done in terms of putting in a framework that addresses the rights of children. When we were discussing the issue of children's rights, even during last year's Day of the African Child, when we were talking about accessing justice, one of the issues that kept coming out was, yes, the structures are in place, but are they well resourced in terms of personnel, but also budgetary allocation? Is there sufficient money that has actually been put in place to make sure that all these organs are working well? That's one. And the second one is on the issue of them working together, harmonizing the operations of the various organs that are working on children issues. So from the justice side, from the ministry itself, there's a Department of Children's Services, there's a Council for Children's Services, there are others in the other ministries. But do they actually read from the same script?
Thank you very much. Just to begin with, I concur with Yvonne, we still have to do much. However, I had her mention about the state party reporting. As a country, we are forefront actually in state party reportings. Yvonne had mentioned that the 6th and 7th state party reporting now is due. But I wish to confirm to her that the National Council for Children's Service is already on the business, and the involvement is there to make sure that the reports are developed and submitted in time.
When are they due?
Just like by September this year. Just like Yvonne is fully aware, Kenya is one of the countries actually in terms of reporting, both in the UNCRC as well as African Charter on the Rights on the Welfare of the Child, that is recognized to be first and leading. Just as Kenya was a leading country even in terms of ratification of this international as well as regional protocols. Like in the African Charter on the Rights on the Welfare of the Child, Kenya was among the first 20 countries. Mm-hmm. In terms of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, Kenya was one of the first 20 countries. In terms of the African Charter on the Rights on Welfare of the Child, Kenya was also among the first 15 countries when it came to ratification. And equally in terms of reporting and compliance, we're still en route. However, I agree with her, we need to improve. And the performance improvement is something that is continuous. It's not only on one-stop thing. I concur that in terms of resources, most of the agencies dealing with in the sector are under-resourced, and there is need for increased resourcing in terms of funds, personnel, and other support that could be afforded. Also in coordination, indeed the National Council for Children's Services is supposed to be the coordinating agency of the government in terms of activities and the issues regarding children. And that's what we do. However, we agree that there are sometimes some gaps in coordination, which we need to still improve on. Yvonne has also mentioned the issue of information management systems. We know there are government many, but the integration is what she's talking about. And we're also going towards that direction to have an integrated management information system for children in Kenya, domiciled at the National Council for Children's Service. We already have the Child Protection Information Management Systems with the Department of Children Services. There was also a question regarding, in terms of protection, what has taken place and where are we, and something like that. As you very well remember, last year there was the launch of the Violence Against Children. Alongside that, there was the response plan action that has been put in place, which we already are towards the course of implementing it. At the same time, also we have a national plan of action on the protection of children against online sexual
Exploitation.
exploitation and abuse, oxea. But as you have asked me, the National Council for Children's Services actually, over the years, has developed several legislations. Still, just recently, we even want to launch for those children in regards actually to changing and the care reforms which we are launching. We are recently thinking launching our care reform strategy, which was in development for the last 1 year now, which we think will do a lot and contribute a lot to children actually who are in the care of institutions now.
Can I ask you a question?
Whom we would wish them to be at home,
Yeah.
since they belong to home.
Right.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
just on that, one of the sticky issues for children in this country has been that of adoption. And we were talking about the rights to be in a home and have access to your basic needs of food, shelter, education, things like this.
Exactly.
The adoption process in this country is very difficult. For people who have tried to adopt, whether they are local or foreign, it has been very sticky. And if we're looking at, just as you've just said now, trying to get these children out of government institutions into homes where they can be cared for in a family setting, as we're looking at the acceleration of the implementation of some of these rights, is that an issue that is going to be given some more attention?
Indeed, Madam, institutionalization of children, to begin with, is an issue, and there's even a global concern. In the United Nations General Assembly resolutions, it was part of the resolutions that children belong to homes. And naturally, we know children belong to homes. That's why in Kenya, I said we were developing the National Care Reform Strategy, which by next month, July, we hope it will be launched and it will start serving our children. On the issue of adoption, I also wish to confirm to you, last year, the minister has formed the National Adoption Committee, and they are fully into their job now, and a lot of work is going on to that effect.
So does it mean, therefore, that this problem that is often referred to and spoken about regarding the difficulty of adoption, that it will be streamlined, simpler to understand?
Yes.
Now, alongside this...
And equally for your information also.
Yes.
Once our Children Bill 2020 becomes a law now, it's our hope also, because there is a lot that has been mentioned also regarding the directions. And the best way actually adoptions will be taking place in the Children's Bill.
Okay.
We expect things will be streamlined.
What-
But with the committee in place, we hope that a lot of streamlining and a lot of actually alignment will be taking place.
I have to say that what I'm hearing from you is not only laudable, but congratulations are in order. This is excellent work. Let me ask, there are all these children's home one sees mushrooming within the country, the entire country.
Thank you.
It means there's a need for children to be looked after because the primary care that you expect in a family doesn't exist. How does the government ensure, first of all, let me maybe step back, are there guidelines that are mandated by the government to ensure that whoever starts such a home, A, follows them, and B, supervisory services and oversight to ensure that the things they say or are expected of them are actually done?
Thank you very much. In terms of registration of CCIs, this
They're called
clear.
CCIs.
Yeah, on our side we call them charitable children institutions.
CCI.
Yes. But I know from our common perspective we call them
Children's
children
homes.
homes.
Yes.
Yes.
So here we call them charitable children institutions because in most cases the statutory children institutions are different and limited to something like rehabilitation schools,
Yes.
remand and rescue institutions,
Juvenile.
Yep.
and child protection centers.
Yeah.
But the greater majority of institutions where children are institutionalized is the charitable children institutions or the children homes. There is a clear guideline on how they are registered. We use the 2005 guidelines. However, there was already a suspension of the registration of any new children
Oh.
homes.
CCI.
And in relation to that, the National Council for Children's Services, which is the registering agency, was only renewing the registration
Of the existing.
Of the
of
existing
the
ones.
existing ones. And still in renewing the registration of the existing ones, we are using the same regulations and measures that stringently ensure that there is real compliance to what's happening. Equally, the Council has routine monitoring, it has routine supervision and spot check together with the Department of Children Services and at the grassroots level through the area advisory councils. However, as it has been said earlier, we must confess we are not able to reach out to them, all of them,
It's a difficult
because sometimes of financial limitation and how far they are spread in the country and how scattered they may be in the remote places. However, there is all the measurements in place as you have requested. I can confirm to you.
I want to ask about the association you have with NGOs and organizations like Save the Children, but what I want to ask before that is this. There are processes of adoption in the country, but do we have a system of fostering? Do we have legislation that requires people to maybe seek training before they can present themselves as potential fostering parents?
There are actually procedures for fostering.
Yes.
Fostering is an official process through the Department of Children's Services, and there is a guideline even for fostering. However, in terms of training, all I can confirm to you is that as the fostering process is taking place, the respective children officers in which the offices or their stations that fostering is taking place are the ones who are supposed to be supporting those communities. And even when a child is fostered, it's not only fostered and left alone. The child is fostered, follow-ups are done, and as the process even is going on, there is a lot of process, including the environmental check.
Do you have a
to ensure
pool
that
of, say, foster parents who are registered and known as, okay, such an individual, these are people
That
who...
you can take a child to.
Yes.
Yes, procedurally there must be, there is, but it's not at a national level. It's at the fostering level in the station, at the station level. Practical experience I will give you. A children officer is in a certain station. There are those people who will already come and say, I want to foster a child. And even some of them are very expensive, very explicit. They tell you they want to foster
A male
daughter,
child.
or they want to foster
A boy.
son. So already, as the foster register is there, we usually maintain something called a foster register in the station, especially the sub-county level stations. Within the foster register now, there is also an alternative registration book which the officers use to keep prospective foster parents. But at the national level, we don't have a pool of foster parents.
Let me ask Yvonne this question. Yvonne, the work that we do, I know, feeds very directly into what Mr. Mohammed has very eloquently told us. But from the perspective of Save the Children, what does success look like? You've told us what you do, how you do it. Paint for us a picture of success in your work. So when it happens, we know, aha,
Save the Children has scored.
Save the Children has saved the children.
Success for me, I mean, there are very many indicators of measuring success in this. It's very wide. Because when we're talking about children, they've got multiple rights, right?
Yes.
Rights to education, not just any education, but a quality education. They've got rights to health. They've got to eat well. They've got a right to protection. So maybe I can zoom in maybe on one particular one, right? So in the Kenyan Constitution, the 2010 Constitution, Article 53, it recognizes the right of all children to be protected from abuse, neglect, harmful cultural practices, all forms of violence, inhumane treatment and punishment, and hazardous or exploitative labor. So coming back to your question again, what does success look like when it comes to child protection?
Yes.
Because like I said, there are other ones. So let me zoom in on child protection in particular.
Yes.
Success starts at the household level because, that's where it starts. It begins at family level. So as part of our ongoing efforts as a country to strengthen, child protection systems, we need to be looking at also what's happening at family, level, right? Do our caregivers and parents appreciate that this might potentially be an issue, and how to, raise children in a positive way, that where violence is not in the equation? Then let's go back to our schools. Is that the same understanding as well? And I'm asking these questions because you can imagine this is a question, depending on whom I ask it to or which community, we will not have the same response to this. So we will agree that, yes, child rights are key and we should advance them, but will we have the right response to that question at a family level and at an educational level? So for me, success starts right from there. Then at a national level is to just continue building on these frameworks that we've got, have them adequately resourced, so that if there's a child somewhere that has an issue, is being abused, it is properly picked up by the community, it is properly reported, then the systems, the systems that we have in place, the police or, the child protection mechanisms that we put in place, on how to address this work, right from, the point of reporting to the point of, how that case is handled, so our case management is really strong, and that relief, or some, positive solutions are found for this child. So in the child protection space, that for me is what success looks like.
Also for you, Mr. Mohammed, I think we've also seen, it sounds like bad news around, but I wanted to ask, from a government point of view, for families whereby children are being mistreated, there's a lot of violence that is being meted upon children, regardless of the fact that they are their own biological children. Is there or will there be any kind of state intervention in those matters? Because we see children being beaten to death. Just last week, there was a story about a child who passed away from injuries inflicted on her by her parents. Will we see the intervention of state for some of those matters?
Yes, surely, madam. Just to begin with first, the perpetrators in terms of children's rights and those ones who inflict violence against the children, in most cases, and the higher percentage, are people who are known even to the children. Yes. It's not foreigners, as people may sometimes think. These include the closest persons, even including the biological or even the mothers or father, or their own siblings and others who are related to them. So, and in terms of law, there is no discrimination. Anybody who violates against the rights of the child should have to meet the right justice actually meted against them. So, indeed, the government will intervene and make sure that those children are protected. Protection of children is not against only foreigners and others who are not related to them.
Yes.
But whether related to them, whether the biological parents or whatever, anybody who infringes into the rights of the child has to be dealt with accordingly as per the law. And we have a lot actually that has taken place even in terms of reforms even in the judiciary. And it has been practical that action has been taken against such people even. However, I know with the COVID-19 pandemic, there had been increased cases of violence, domestic violence, that has also infiltrated into the children, a lot of defilement and pregnancies. But the government was on also involved, and we thank the judicial sector and the justice system for having on continued with the dispensation of justice even at that time through virtual modes, and things have not stopped. And still on the issue of what we term as success for children to me, the vision of the National Council for Children's Service is a protected and empowered child. We envision a Kenya whereby all children are protected, at the same time they are empowered to become useful, helpful members, not to only themselves, but to the society in which they live, their country, the continent, as well as the world.
The whole world.
Yes.
Let's take a break now, but just to say goodbye to our audience on KTN Home who've been with us since the top of the hour. And then we come back and just have our closing remarks from you, Abdinoor Mohammed and Yvonne Arunga. We have been having a conversation about accelerating implementation of the rights of children. With us in the studio is the acting CEO of the National Council for Children's Services, and also the country director for Save the Children. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room, 5 minutes to 9.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.